Hello and welcome back once again to BCU Sport TV. We are bringing a preview of Six Nations and we discussed about Ireland versus Wales, and now it's time to talk about the Calcutta Cup between Scotland versus England. The first ever international was played between these two teams and they are going to play for the 140th time, with England has the advantage of winning over 70 games. Gentlemen, first up, let's talk about the leadership skill and also Stuart Hogg and Tom Curry, a new captain in the absence of Owen Farrell.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Curry goes with this. I think when you look across the English team, I think Laws was probably the person in line, but obviously with him out as well, I think that Eddie Jones had to pick somebody probably from the forwards to lead this, and Curry is probably the obvious person. They may well miss Farrell, I think, as a leader on the field, but Curry will be I think slightly different type of leader, but he certainly got the potential to be a really good captain, I think, and obviously with Hogg on the Scottish side, tends to lead by example, and he's been their talisman for a number of years now. So it'll be a really interesting game to see how the leadership goes on both sides.
I think it's quite interesting just in terms of the different fullbacks are a long way away from the action, from the referee, and that's probably always been a question across any level of the game about how much can you impact things from back that far away. So maybe that's slightly advantage England, but then the difference being, as Mark said, Curry, brand new captain, world class in what he does. There's probably maybe some chat around actually how he interacts with referees when he's at Sale. I think England have fallen foul of that previously. Thinking back to the Wales game last year or the year before, not engaging with the referee in the right way, suddenly the penalty count starts creeping up. So it'll be interesting. I know they've had referees in previously into camp to look at that and work with the players on how they engage and the mechanisms the referees use within the game. So I think there's probably big potential for some easy wins there if they manage the referee correctly, and for him to kind of learn as the tournament goes on. I guess, as Mark said, without Laws, without Farrell, what do you then revert the captaincy back if they come in later? It poses a lot of questions. We said earlier it's about momentum. If he gives the momentum after the first game, do you just stick with that and run with it, or does it suddenly open up a number of other decisions around actually chopping and changing leaders partway through a campaign? So a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, and I think Murrayfield is a hard place for any English person to earn their first cap as captain. So, Curry's got a big task on his hand with a range of youngsters in the team as well. So he's got to manage things that he's probably not used to managing. So it'll be interesting to see how well he does.
And also, talking about Stuart Hogg, Rob Baxter at Exeter's chief, he kept him out for the starting lineup in the last year's final or semi-final, if I'm not mistaken. So he himself, Hogg, proved a point to the Baxter and the entire team that how good he is and how capable he is, and ever since he never lost his position. So that's a good statement from him, taking that into. But although it's a home game, so much pressure under his shoulders, but do you think the home pressure will add an impact?
I think it's very interesting in the fact that for the last number of years, Scotland haven't been expected to do anything. Whereas now I think there is more expectation on their backs, and it's strange that Eddie Jones is saying that Scotland are favourites, Gregor Townsend is saying that England are favourites, and I think it's always easier to go into these sort of games as slight underdogs and play above that expectation than it is to go in and sort of meet those expectations of coming out as winners. So it's going to be it's a fascinating tie. It really is. It's I think that Scotland aren't going to be in the mix at the end of the championship, but I think they will take one big scalp. I think they will beat either England, Ireland, or France. It's just which one they they win. And I dare say, first game of the championship and at home, they're probably targeting this one as much as any.
I think it's as Mark said, the mind games, and that's part of the circus that goes with the Six Nations, isn't it? Suddenly everyone's trying to get in each other's heads, and there's a lot of that going on. So I don't see how Scotland can say they're not favourites. Beating England, well, they drew obviously, but I think they've beaten them 4 of the last 5 times they've played. So suddenly I think with that, notoriously Scotland haven't done well under pressure. So can they actually kind of just take that leap forward and start to back up? I think some pretty strong performances. They've got a squad that's probably stronger and deeper than it's ever been. So perennial, not necessarily underachievers, but they've never quite just pushed on and been consistent enough to challenge. So is this the year that happens? If they get a win, quite possibly. I really do feel like they could ride that momentum and beat some of the other big kind of nations. Italy are always going to be a little bit of a write-off, I guess. So how that pans out, as Mark said, I think just genuinely fascinating. But I'm kind of jumping siding with Eddie Jones and saying I think Scotland are favourites.
Wow, interesting call. With the amount of injuries in the last minute, of course, Farrell was injured just 2 weeks ago, and knowing Laws and Johnny Hill, 2 second rowers, that's a big impact for the side, and also Joe Marchand is not playing.
Yeah, I think Marchand's actually just come out of isolation, so he's been named on the wing to start, which I'd have loved to have seen him at 13, to be completely honest. I think maybe they'll interplay that a little bit, and he'll kind of chop and change. But as you say up front, I think England have gone from second row for a number of years has probably been England's strongest position in terms of depth, and suddenly within the space of a couple of weeks they're a little bit light on that. I mean, the fact Itoje is still there, a proven world-class international operator, I don't think you can overlook that. Ezekwe comes in. He kind of had a chance a few years ago. Probably didn't maybe take it as well as he could have. So he's been out of the fray for a little while. I think who they're waiting for, to be completely honest, is Joe Launchbury. I think he's been a huge loss. In fact, he's played for Wasps and he's kind of back in the reckoning as soon as he's up to speed. I genuinely do think they'll just parachute him in and kind of benefit from the size and physicality that he brings, but also the kind of the subtle skills. So yeah, he's gone from a position of strength to a real kind of position of a little bit of a question, and I think maybe Scotland can target that lack of partnership in England's second row.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about this game as well is that Scotland, probably for the first time in a number of years, have probably got their most settled team.
Yeah.
Whereas England have had to make a number of changes, and I'm really pleased that Eddie Jones is going with some of the youngsters. So I think Marchant, Malins, and Stewart as the back three is quite exciting. As Phil said, I think it would have been really interesting to see Marchant at 13. But with Marcus Smith at 10 as well, there's some really interesting youngsters there. And what is going to be important is how they react to playing in Murrayfield, in what will be without doubt a hostile environment. The Scottish crowd will make it as unpleasant as possible. And I think there's some rain forecasts as well, which will make it even more unpleasant. So I think a lot will really go on how those youngsters especially manage the situation and the environment as a whole.
Well, all eyes would be on the Harlequin sensation Marcus Smith. Is he the right number 10? Has he got enough opportunities, or is it the right time for him to shine among, especially against a rival like Finn Russell?
I think to start with, he is most definitely the right person to start this game, and I think he'll probably start every game in this championship at 10. He needs to be given time. He needs to be able to settle in that role if Eddie Jones is going to get the best out of him, and I think that he's made that call. What England have got more than anybody, and I think this will make the difference in the end, is the finishers, as Eddie calls them, to come on sort of midway through the second half. So the opportunity to bring Ford on, who's been in sparkling form for Leicester, and then the likes of Jack Nowell, who were going to be desperate to get back onto that international pitch. I think that's where the difference between the two teams will probably lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack Noel versus Vandermeer. We saw Vandermeer how threatening in terms of meters, and he scored loads of tries in the Lions tour as well. So that's going to be an interesting clash between those two.
Yeah, I think so. I, as Mark said, with the weather coming in, I wonder how much of it will start to turn to an aerial game. And I know England probably pivoted slightly in the autumn internationals to move to a more kind of up-tempo attacking play. But again, they've probably fallen foul of that at Murrayfield before, where they tried to go and maybe even overplay, and Scotland have caught them. So I think that becomes really interesting. I mean, there was a lot of chat at the time in the Lions tour around Vandermeer under the high ball, and suddenly you look at Stewart and Malins and you go, both are quality fullbacks in the Premiership. And actually, I mean, I don't think I've seen Stewart drop a high ball yet. So if they're going to bombard someone, I think it'll be coming on Vandermeer's wing. But you also say, actually, and I think that comes kind of back to George Ford on the bench. Like if England aren't on the front foot early, other than maybe Farrell, I can't think of many better players to come on. Those spiral bombs going up in the cold Edinburgh air into the rain, and maybe some sleet or hail or whatever it is up there. But that will be very, very testing, and I think that's a great option to have coming on. But I mean, in terms of box office up front, Finn Russell versus Marcus Smith that's what you're paying for, right? Like, everyone is going to be glued to the edge of their seat watching those two. It literally could just be a 1v1 contest and you still get 60,000 people pay to watch it. They are absolutely just phenomenal rugby players, and what they can do with the ball. And I just hope the conditions don't ruin that, and the pressure doesn't ruin that it really is two teams that want to go out there and play attacking rugby rather than get caught up in the pressure of the occasion, and it becomes a bit of a kick fest.
Wonderful indeed. We know that weather we cannot predict, but in terms of Eddie Jones' tactics, I'm sure he will have plan B. Usually he did not have a plan B for the losing matches in the previous, as per some media, as we witnessed as well. How do you think Gregor Townsend, because he was touring with the Lions tour, certainly he got so much knowledge in terms of sharing knowledge with his knowledge and Gatland's knowledge, of course. In terms of that experience, how do you think in terms of tactical play will be plotted on Saturday?
I mean, I think the fascinating one is actually that by all accounts, Finn Russell would have probably spent quite a lot of time with Marcus developing his game on the Lions tour. So there's always an added edge coming into a Six Nations off the back of a Lions, because those guys have been working together. So how much of they learn off each other, how much do they then know about the opposition, as you say, is quite an interesting one. But I don't think Scotland, I think it's pretty much in their DNA to want to try and play, to want to try and move the ball. There is really no point in having a Finn Russell or a Marcus Smith if you're not going to use those talents to actually just unleash the quality of player, hog those types of guys behind them in the back line. So as I say, that's fingers crossed. Let's hope that the weather doesn't impact that too much.
Do you think, Mark, the players number 10s, Finn and Marcus, will they have the freedom to do what they want, or put all their skills, or just they will stick to the game plan?
I think that certainly for Gregor Townsend, Finn Russell has been a key member of the Scottish team for the last couple of years, and when Finn Russell is on form, Scotland are on form. So I think that Gregor Townsend, an ex-10 himself, who was a similar player in a way to Finn Russell, I think Finn Russell will definitely have that opportunity to play the type of game that the Scotland normally like to play. I hope that Marcus Smith is given the opportunity to do what he can do. England tend to have built their game on, a very physical sort of pack play to start with, sort of playing the right areas of the field and then trying to play. I'd like to see Marcus Smith given a little bit more opportunity. But with a newer pack, with not as much physicality in the English pack as we've probably seen, although Simmons is going to bring in a new dimension to that as well. And it'll be interesting to see how he influences the game and potentially sort of gains those yards, and if they can get quick ball off what he can do, then hopefully Marcus Smith will have a little bit of opportunity to play his game.
Well, rugby is a team sport played among 15, but this Saturday it's going to be only all eyes will be on Marcus Smith and Finn Russell. Finally, what's your prediction going to this weekend?
I think this is the hardest one to call out of all three games by a long way. I'd love England to win. I think they need to win, as we talked about previously. The Six Nations is all about that momentum. Whoever gets on the front foot and gets the first round win has a really good chance of going on from there. So yeah, I'm hoping England, but I think Scotland maybe by 3.
I think the England bench will make the difference. So I would say England by 7.
That's interesting. Thank you very much. I do think England by, I don't want to say points, but England win at least by a point. We'll wait and see. Thank you very much for your time, Mark and Phil. So that's the preview of the Six Nations for this weekend. And we'll see you next week with more action on BCU Sport TV.